Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars disappear one by one. The viewing screen showed empty space where 3 star systems used to shine. Just yesterday, those systems had millions of people living on their planets. Now there was nothing but darkness. "Sir, we're getting more reports," said his communication officer. Her voice shook as she spoke. "The Kepler system is gone too. All 7 planets. The enemy ate everything." Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment. He had been an admiral in the human fleet for 20 years. He had seen wars before, but nothing like this. Nothing that made entire star systems vanish in just a few hours. The enemy called themselves the Vorthak. They came from the empty space between galaxies, traveling in ships that looked like living things. Each ship was as big as a city, but the worst part was not their size. The worst part was how many of them there were. "How many ships did our scouts count this time?" Hyunwoo asked. "The computers stopped counting at 50 billion, sir. There are too many to track. 50 billion ships, and those were just the ones they could see. Intelligence reports said there were millions more coming from deep space. Maybe billions more. The Vorthak moved like a wave of death, eating everything in their path." Hyunwoo walked to the star map in the center of the bridge. Red dots showed where the Vorthak had been. Blue dots showed the systems that were still safe. 3 months ago, the map was mostly blue. Now it was mostly red. "Sir, the Galactic Council is calling for another emergency meeting," said his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Mi Young. "What's the point?" Hyunwoo said. "Let me guess. The Alari want to retreat to their home worlds. The Kethvar are talking about surrender, and the Zephyrians are building more hiding places." "Yes, sir. That's exactly what they're saying." Hyunwoo was not surprised. The other alien species in the galaxy were old and wise. They had fought many wars over millions of years. They knew how to calculate odds. They could do math. And the math said that fighting the Vorthak was impossible. The door to the bridge opened and Dr. So Young walked in. She was the chief scientist on Hyunwoo's ship. Her job was to study alien life forms, but now she only studied one kind of alien, the Vorthak. "Admiral, I have new information about the enemy," she said. She looked tired. She had not slept much since the invasion began. "What did you find?" Hyunwoo asked. "I studied the Vorthak prisoners we captured last week. Their brains are connected somehow. They all think the same thoughts at the same time. When one Vorthak learns something, they all learn it instantly. That explains why they fight so well together," Mi Young said. "Yes, but there's more," So Young continued. "They don't just share thoughts. They share everything. Memories, feelings, even dreams. It's like they are all parts of one giant brain." Hyunwoo thought about this. "So when we fight one Vorthak ship, we're really fighting all of them?" "In a way, yes. But I think this might also be their weakness. If they all think the same way, they might not be able to understand enemies who think differently." Before Hyunwoo could ask more questions, the communication system came to life. "All human fleet commanders report to the council chambers immediately. Emergency session beginning now." The council chambers were on the space station Harmony, which floated in neutral space between different alien territories. It was supposed to be a place where all species could meet as equals. But today it felt more like a funeral home. Hyunwoo arrived to find the great hall filled with alien leaders from across the galaxy. The tall, graceful Ilari stood in their silver robes. The crystal-skinned Kethvar glowed with nervous energy. The gas-breathing Zephyrians floated in their protective suits. There were dozens of other species too, all looking scared and defeated. At the center of the hall stood a massive display showing the current state of the galaxy. The red areas where the Vorthak controlled space now covered almost half of all known systems, and the red was still growing. The Ilari ambassador spoke first. Her voice was calm, but Hyunwoo could hear fear underneath. "Fellow council members, we must face the truth. The Vorthak cannot be stopped by conventional warfare. They outnumber us by ratios we cannot overcome. The mathematics are clear," added the Kethvar representative. His crystal body flashed with angry red light. "Even if we combined every ship from every species, we would still be outnumbered 10,000 to 1. This is not a war. This is extinction." The Zephyrian delegate floated forward. "My people have already begun evacuating our core worlds. We suggest all species do the same. Perhaps in the outer rim territories we can wait until the Vorthak move on to other galaxies." "Wait for how long?" asked someone from the back of the hall. 1,000 years? 10,000? "However long it takes," the Ilari ambassador replied. Some of our civilizations have existed for billions of years. We know how to be patient. Hyunwoo listened to all of this with growing anger. These aliens were talking about giving up their entire galaxy. They wanted to hide in the corners of space and hope the monsters would go away. It was the smart thing to do. It was the logical thing to do. It was probably the right thing to do. But it was not the human thing to do. When the debate finally ended, the council president asked if anyone else had something to say. Hyunwoo stood up. Yes, humanity has something to say. The hall became quiet. All eyes turned to look at the human admiral. He was smaller than most of the aliens in the room. Humans were a young species, barely out of their home system compared to the others. What could they possibly add to this discussion? You've all done your math, Hyunwoo said. His voice carried clearly through the hall. You've calculated the odds. You've run the numbers. And you're right. If we fight the Vorthak the way you've always fought wars, we'll lose. Some of the aliens nodded. At least the humans understood logic. But here's the thing, Hyunwoo continued. Humans don't fight wars the way you do. We don't calculate odds before we decide what's right. We don't run away just because the enemy has more ships. Admiral, the Ilari ambassador said gently, your species is brave, but bravery cannot overcome mathematics. Maybe not, Hyunwoo replied. But I'll tell you what can overcome mathematics. Fury. Pure human fury at seeing innocent people eaten by monsters. He walked to the center of the hall, standing next to the galaxy display. You want to know what humanity's answer is to the Vorthak invasion? We're going to fight them. Every ship, every station, every human settlement will fight. And we won't stop fighting until either they're all dead or we are. That's suicide, the Kethva representative said. Maybe, Hyunwoo agreed, but it's our choice to make. And I'll tell you something else. When we start fighting back, really fighting back, some of you might remember what it feels like to not give up. The hall erupted in discussions. Some aliens thought the humans were insane. Others seemed interested despite themselves. A few looked ashamed that such a young species was showing more courage than their ancient civilizations. Hyunwoo didn't wait to hear their arguments. He had made humanity's position clear. While other species ran and hid, humans would stand and fight. It might be impossible. It might be stupid. But it was what humans did. As he walked out of the council chambers, Mi-young caught up with him. Sir, do you really think we can win? Hyunwoo looked back at the display showing half the galaxy covered in red. 50 billion enemy ships, maybe more. Ancient civilizations fleeing in terror. The smart money said humanity would be extinct within a year. I don't know if we can win, he said, but I know we're going to try. And sometimes trying is enough. Behind them, the council continued to debate retreat and surrender. But Hyunwoo was done with talk. It was time for humanity to show the galaxy what fury could accomplish when massive numbers weren't enough. General Mi-young stood in the war room deep inside Mars, watching the holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. 3 months had passed since the council meeting. 3 months of retreat and defeat for most species, but not for humanity. The display told a grim story. Red markers showed Vorthak-controlled space, which now covered 60% of the galaxy. Blue markers showed areas still under Allied control. Green markers showed recent battle sites. There were a lot of green markers around human space. General, the latest casualty reports are in, said Colonel Dong-hyun, her aide. His face was serious as he handed her the datapad. Mi-young read the numbers. 12 human ships destroyed in the last week. 3,000 crew members dead. By any normal measure, these were terrible losses. But the next number made her smile grimly. 47 Vorthak ships destroyed in the same battles. We're getting better at this, she said. Yes, ma'am. But the other species don't understand our tactics. The Ilari ambassador called our methods barbaric yesterday. Mi-young laughed, but there was no humor in it. Barbaric, right, because losing with honor is better than winning ugly. She walked over to the tactical planning table where her staff was working on the next operation. Unlike the neat, organized battle plans that other species used, human tactics looked like chaos. Ramming attacks, kamikaze runs, guerrilla strikes from asteroids, mining ships loaded with explosives, nothing the Vorthak expected. Status report on Operation Meteor, Mi-young said. Captain Jin-ho stepped forward. He was young for a ship commander, but he had already led 5 successful raids against Vorthak forces. His latest mission was his most ambitious yet. We've modified 12 cargo haulers with military-grade engines and weapons, Jinho reported. The ships look like civilian freighters on scanners, but they pack enough firepower to take out a Vorthak destroyer. And the target? A Vorthak breeding facility in the Kepler system. Intelligence says it's producing 1 million new ships every day. Mi Young studied the mission plan. Jinho wanted to take his disguised cargo ship straight into the heart of a Vorthak-controlled system. They would be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Any sane military commander would call it suicide. What did the computers say about your chances? She asked. 0.3% survival rate, Jinho replied. But the computers also said we couldn't retake the Luna defense stations last month. We proved them wrong then, that was true. Human forces had retaken 3 major installations that the Vorthak had captured. The aliens had been so shocked by the fierce counterattacks that they had pulled back their fleets to regroup. It was the first time any species had made the Vorthak retreat. Approved, Mi Young said. When do you launch? Tomorrow at 800, General. As Jinho left to prepare his ships, Dr. So Young entered the war room. She had been working around the clock in her laboratory, studying captured Vorthak technology and biology. Her research had given humanity its first real advantages in the war. General, I have important news, So Young said. She looked excited despite her obvious exhaustion. Good news, I hope. Very good. I've been studying the Vorthak hive-mind connection. You remember how they all share thoughts instantly? Yes, it makes them coordinate perfectly in battle. Right, but I've discovered something the other alien scientists missed. The hive mind has a weakness. So Young activated a holographic display showing Vorthak brain patterns. Look at these neural scans. Every Vorthak thinks exactly the same thoughts at exactly the same time. Their minds are perfectly synchronized. That sounds like a strength, not a weakness. It is a strength when they fight predictable enemies. But humans don't fight predictably. We improvise. We change tactics in the middle of battle. We do things that don't make logical sense. Mi Young began to understand. And the hive mind can't adapt to chaos. Exactly. When we attack them with conventional tactics, they respond perfectly. But when Captain Tejo used those modified mining ships to ram their flagship last week, it took them almost 10 minutes to figure out how to respond. 10 minutes where their entire fleet was confused. This was huge. The Vorthak's greatest strength might also be their greatest weakness. If humans could stay unpredictable, they could keep the enemy off balance. There's more, So Young continued. I've been analyzing the wreckage from our battles. The Vorthak ships are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly standardized. Every ship of the same class is identical. Same weapons, same defenses, same weak points. So once we learn how to kill one type of ship, we can kill them all the same way. They can't modify their designs quickly because the hive mind doesn't think creatively. Before Mi Young could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the war room. Red lights flashed as the duty officer called out, General! Massive Vorthak fleet detected approaching the Titan defense line. They're moving fast. The main display switched to show the outer edge of human space. A wall of red dots was moving toward one of humanity's most important defensive positions. The computer counted 2,000 enemy ships. How many defenders do we have at Titan? Mi Young asked. 87 ships, General, plus the orbital defense platforms. The numbers were terrible. Even with humanity's new tactics, this looked like a slaughter. But Mi Young had learned something important over the past 3 months. Numbers didn't tell the whole story. Get me Admiral Yunwoo, she ordered. Yunwoo's face appeared on the communication screen. He was on his flagship racing toward the battle zone. General, I'm an hour out from Titan. This is going to be rough. What's your plan? Same as always. Hit them where they don't expect it. Keep moving. Make them think we're crazy. Are we crazy? Hyunwoo grinned. Probably. But it's working so far. The next few hours were tense. The war room staff monitored the battle through long-range sensors and communications from the fighting ships. The Vorthak attacked exactly as expected, in perfect formation, using overwhelming firepower to crush the human defenders. But the humans didn't fight back as expected. Instead of meeting the enemy in formation, they scattered in all directions. Single ships attacked from impossible angles. Damaged vessels rammed enemy dreadnoughts instead of retreating. Mining platforms that should have been evacuated suddenly revealed hidden weapons and opened fire. This is Commander Lee on the destroyer Defiant, came a voice over the communication system. We've lost engines and weapons, but we're still got maneuvering thrusters. Ramming speed on that Vorthak carrier. Negative, defiant, Admiral Hyunwoo replied. You have 30 crew on board. 30 crew who signed up to fight monsters, sir. We can take that carrier with us and save a lot of lives. Making our run now. The display showed a small human ship accelerating toward a massive Vorthak vessel. The enemy tried to destroy it with defensive fire, but the human ship was too small and moving too erratically. It slammed into the carrier's hull at tremendous speed. The explosion was visible on sensors from several light years away. When it cleared, both ships were gone. Defiant is down, the sensor officer reported quietly. But so is the enemy carrier and its escort group. This pattern repeated across the battlefield. Human ships died, but they took enemies with them. More importantly, they were confusing the Vorthak fleet. The enemy had expected a conventional battle. Instead, they were dealing with pure chaos. General, Dr. So Young said, watching her instruments. Look at the Vorthak formation patterns. They're starting to break down. She was right. The perfect enemy coordination was falling apart. Some Vorthak ships were responding to threats that had already been destroyed. Others were firing at empty space where they thought human ships should be. They can't process our tactics, So Young explained. Their hive mind keeps trying to predict what we'll do next, but we're not following any logical pattern. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the humans had lost 40 ships and thousands of lives. But the Vorthak had lost over 300 vessels, and their surviving ships were retreating in confusion. This is Admiral Hyunwoo to all ships, came the voice over the communication system. Stand down from battle stations. The enemy is withdrawing. Cheers echoed through the war room on Mars. It was humanity's biggest victory yet against the Vorthak, but Mi Young knew it was just the beginning. Doctor, how long before they adapt to our tactics? She asked So Young. I don't think they can adapt. Their hive mind doesn't work that way. They can learn new information, but they can't change their fundamental thinking patterns. Then we keep hitting them with chaos. Every battle has to be different from the last one. Captain Jin Ho's mission to the Kepler system was launched the next day. His 12 modified cargo ships jumped into a system controlled by millions of Vorthak vessels. They should have been destroyed immediately. Instead, they appeared to be harmless civilian ships fleeing the battle zone. The Vorthak ignored them while focusing on what they thought was the real threat, a small human battle group that had jumped in at the same time. By the time the enemy realized the cargo ships were actually warships loaded with explosives, it was too late. Jin Ho's ship slammed into the breeding facility and detonated their payloads. The facility, which had been producing 1 million new Vorthak ships per day, was completely destroyed. The explosion was so massive that it damaged dozens of nearby enemy vessels. Admiral Hyunwoo stared at the holographic map floating in the center of the command room. The red zones showing Vorthak control still covered most of the galaxy, but something had changed. For the first time in 6 months, the red wasn't growing. In some places, it was actually shrinking. Show me the latest battle reports, he said to his aide, Lieutenant Yejin. The display changed to show recent combat zones. Green markers indicated human victories. There were more green markers than ever before, scattered across dozens of star systems. Each one represented a successful raid against Vorthak positions. Sir, the enemy is pulling back from several sectors, Yejin reported. They're consolidating their fleets around their most important positions. They're scared, said Captain Taeho, who had just returned from a mission behind enemy lines. I've never seen the Vorthak retreat before, but now they run when they see human ships coming. Hyunwoo nodded. Humanity's chaotic fighting style was working better than anyone had hoped. The Vorthak hive mind simply could not understand enemies who refused to follow logical patterns. Every time the aliens thought they had figured out human tactics, the humans would do something completely different. But victories against scattered enemy fleets were one thing. What Hyunwoo was planning now was something else entirely. Gentlemen, ladies, he said to his senior staff, we need to talk about the impossible. He activated a new display that showed the center of the galaxy. There, surrounded by the densest concentration of red markers anyone had ever seen, was a single pulsing symbol. The Vorthak Prime Hive, Dr. So Young said quietly. She had been studying intelligence reports about the enemy's central command for weeks. It's where they produce the queens that create new swarms. Intelligence estimates put the defensive fleet at over 10 million ships, added Colonel Dong-hyun. Plus automated defenses, orbital weapons platforms, and the hive itself, which is apparently the size of a small moon. Getting there would mean fighting through 17 heavily defended systems, Taeho said. Each one has more Vorthak ships than our entire navy. Hyunwoo looked around the room at his officers. They were all good people. Experienced fighters who had proven themselves in dozens of battles. They had also just told him why his plan was completely insane. You're absolutely right, he said. It's impossible. We can't fight through that much firepower. We don't have enough ships, enough weapons, or enough people. His staff looked confused. If the admiral agreed the mission was impossible, why was he talking about it? But here's the thing, Hyunwoo continued. 6 months ago, the experts said we couldn't stop the Vorthak anywhere. They said human tactics wouldn't work against a hive-mind enemy. They said we'd be extinct by now. He gestured to the battle reports showing human victories across the galaxy. They were wrong about all of that. Maybe they're wrong about this too. Sir, Dr. So-young said carefully, even if we could reach the prime hive, we don't know how to destroy it. It's not just a ship or a station. It's a living organism the size of a planetary body. Then we'll figure it out when we get there, Hyunwoo replied. The Vorthak have been conquering galaxies for millions of years because no one ever attacked their source. Every species just fought the symptoms and ignored the disease. Fleet Admiral Chang Min, who had been quiet during the discussion, finally spoke up. Admiral, I'll follow you into hell if you ask me to. My people will too. But this mission will cost us everything. Even if we succeed, we'll lose most of our fleet getting there. Probably all of our fleet, Hyunwoo agreed. But if we don't try, the Vorthak will eventually overwhelm us anyway. They're producing new ships faster than we can destroy them. Our only hope is to cut off the source. The room fell silent as everyone considered this. It was the kind of desperate plan that only made sense when all other options had failed. The kind of mission that people would call either brilliant or insane, depending on whether it worked. I'll need volunteers, Hyunwoo said. Every ship, every crew member. Nobody gets ordered on this mission. Captain Jin Ho was the first to speak. The determination volunteers, sir. My crew and I have been fighting these monsters since day one. We'd like to finish the job. The Defiance volunteers too, said Commander Mi-young, who had taken command of a new ship after her last one was destroyed in battle. One by one, every officer in the room volunteered their ships and crews. Within hours, word had spread throughout the human fleet. By the end of the day, over 1,000 ships had volunteered for the mission. But it wasn't just humans. News of the plan had somehow reached other species, and to everyone's surprise, some of them wanted to help too. Sir, we're getting communication from the Alari cruiser Starwind, Yejin reported. Captain Veltar says his ship wants to join the mission. The Alari? Hyunwoo was surprised. The graceful aliens had been among the most vocal critics of human tactics. Why would they want to come with us? The answer came directly from Captain Veltar himself. His image appeared on the communication screen, showing the tall, elegant alien in his silver uniform. Admiral Hyunwoo, Veltar said formally, my people have watched humans fight for 6 months. We called your methods crude and barbaric. We were wrong. We have forgotten what it means to fight for something greater than our own survival. This mission will probably kill everyone who goes on it, Hyunwoo warned. Yes, but if we do not go, we will spend the rest of our lives running from an enemy we could have defeated. The Alari have not felt shame in 10,000 years. We do not like the feeling. Other alien ships joined the fleet over the following days. A few Kethvar vessels, whose crystal crews glowed with determined light. A squadron of Zephyrian fighters piloted by gas breathers who had grown tired of hiding. Even some species that had never worked with humans before. Dr. So-young spent every waking moment studying intelligence about the prime hive and the defenses around it. What she found was not encouraging. The journey will take us through the most heavily defended space in the galaxy, she reported to Hyunwoo. Every system between here and the galactic center has massive Vorthak fleets. Even moving at maximum speed, fighting constantly, it will take weeks to reach the target. What about our allies? Hyunwoo asked. Have the other species committed any serious forces to help? Some, but most are still evacuating their people to the Outer Rim territories. They're hoping we succeed, but they're not willing to risk their own fleets. Can't blame them, Hyunwoo said. It's the smart play. But not the human play? No, humans don't make smart plays. We make necessary plays. The final fleet that assembled for the mission was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 1,000 human ships ranging from massive battleships to converted cargo haulers loaded with explosives. 50 alien vessels crewed by beings who had decided that some things were worth dying for. support ships carrying supplies, medical equipment, and Dr. So Young's mobile laboratory. As the fleet prepared to depart, messages came in from across human space. Families saying goodbye to their loved ones, children sending drawings to the brave people going to fight the monsters, military units that couldn't join the mission wishing them luck. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source. The Galactic Council, meeting in emergency session, sent an official communication to the fleet. To the brave souls departing on this mission, the message read, "Know that you carry the hopes of every civilized species in the galaxy. Whether you succeed or fail, you have already accomplished something we thought impossible. You have reminded us all what courage looks like." Fleet Admiral Chung Min stood on the bridge of his flagship as the massive fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, 1,000 points of light, ready to travel into the heart of enemy territory on a mission that would either save the galaxy or destroy everyone who attempted it. "All ships report ready for jump," his navigation officer announced. Chung Min looked at the tactical display one last time. Behind them lay the safe territories where billions of people were depending on their success. Ahead lay 17 systems full of enemies, and beyond that, the source of all the galaxy's nightmares. "All ships," he broadcast to the fleet. "This is Admiral Chung Min. Today we begin the longest, hardest fight of our lives. We go not because we want to die, but because we refuse to live as slaves to fear. Jump on my mark." The stars shifted as space folded around the fleet. 1,000 ships disappeared from safe space and reappeared in the first enemy system, where 10,000 Vorthak vessels waited to destroy them. The battle for the galaxy's heart had begun. And for the first time since the invasion started, humanity was taking the fight to the enemy instead of just defending against them. The Vorthak had never faced an enemy crazy enough to attack their home territory. They were about to learn that sometimes being crazy was the most logical thing of all. The journey to the Galactic Center had cost them everything. Admiral Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, looking at what remained of the great fleet that had started this impossible mission. Of the 1,000 ships that had begun the journey 3 weeks ago, only 300 survived, but they had made it. Against all odds, through 17 systems packed with enemy forces, they had fought their way to the heart of Vorthak space. And now, displayed on the main screen before them, was their target. The Prime Hive defied human understanding. It was not a ship or a station, but a living moon-sized creature floating in space. Its surface writhed with organic growths that pulsed with sickly light. Streams of smaller creatures flowed in and out of openings in its flesh, like blood cells moving through arteries. "Sensors are detecting massive bioelectrical activity," reported Dr. So Young from her mobile laboratory ship. "This thing isn't just alive. It's thinking." The entire organism is one giant brain. Around the Prime Hive, space was filled with Vorthak ships, millions of them, arranged in defensive patterns that stretched as far as sensors could reach. They moved in perfect coordination, like schools of deadly fish protecting their spawning ground. "How many are we facing?" asked Fleet Admiral Chung Min over the communication system. "Computer estimates put the defensive fleet at 8 million vessels," replied Captain Taeho from his scout ship, "plus automated weapon platforms, biomechanical defense networks, and the Hive itself. 8 million ships. Even after all their victories, after proving that human tactics could work against impossible odds, the numbers were still overwhelming. Every human ship was outnumbered by thousands of enemies. "Sir," said Lieutenant Yejin from the communication station, "we're receiving a message from Captain Dong-hyun's group. He's volunteering to lead the frontal assault." Hyun-woo activated the communication link. Dong-hyun's face appeared on screen, showing the young captain who had volunteered for every dangerous mission since the war began. "Admiral, my battle group will attack the main defensive line," Dong-hyun said. "We'll draw as many enemy ships away from the Hive as possible. That should give the strike teams a chance to get through." "Captain, you know what that means," Hyun-woo replied. "You'll be facing millions of ships with only 50 vessels." "Yes, sir. But that's 50 ships full of humans who are really, really angry about what these monsters have done to our galaxy." Before Hyun-woo could respond, other captains began volunteering for the suicide mission. Commander Jin-ho offered his modified attack ships. Captain Mi-young volunteered her heavy cruiser squadron. Even some of the alien allies wanted to join the frontal assault. "This is Captain Veltar of the Alari ship Starwind," came a transmission from one of the alien vessels. My crew and I request permission to join Captain Donghyun's attack. Captain, Hyunwoo said, your people have already done enough. You don't have to die with us. Admiral, Veltar replied with dignity. 6 months ago, the Alari were ready to abandon this galaxy to save ourselves. Today we choose to save the galaxy even if it costs us everything. It is a better way to end our story. The final assault plan was simple and desperate. Half the remaining fleet would attack the outer defenses, drawing the Vorthak forces away from the Prime Hive. The other half would try to penetrate the creature's biological defenses and somehow destroy it from within. Dr. So-young had been working frantically to find the hive's weak points. The creature has what looks like a central nervous system, she reported. If we can reach the core and disrupt its brain functions, the entire hive mind network might collapse. How do we get inside that thing? Asked Commander Jin-ho. The same way we've been fighting this war, Hyunwoo said. We do something the Vorthak don't expect. The battle began with Dong-hyun's frontal assault. His 50 ships charged straight into the enemy defensive line, weapons blazing. The Vorthak responded exactly as expected, sending thousands of ships to intercept the attackers. The space around the Prime Hive erupted in explosions as human ships fought against impossible odds. Dong-hyun's vessels used every trick they had learned during months of fighting. Ramming attacks, kamikaze runs, unpredictable maneuvers that confused the enemy formations. This is Dong-hyun to all ships, came his voice over the communication system. They're taking the bait. Massive enemy forces moving to engage us. Strike teams have their opening. On his screen, Hyunwoo watched the tactical display as thousands of red dots swarmed toward Dong-hyun's small force. It was working. The frontal assault was drawing enemies away from the hive itself. But the cost was terrible. Human ships were dying by the dozens, each one taking hundreds of crew members with it. The sacrifice was buying time and opportunity, but at a price that made Hyunwoo's heart ache. Admiral, Dr. So-young called from her laboratory ship. I'm reading massive bioelectrical feedback from the hive. Our attacks are actually hurting it somehow. She was right. As human ships died fighting the Vorthak defenders, something strange was happening to the Prime Hive. Its surface was pulsing more rapidly, and energy discharges were crackling across its organic hull. The hive mind isn't just connected to Vorthak ships, So-young realized. It's connected to everything they do. When our people fight with such fury, such chaos, it's disrupting the entire network. This gave Hyunwoo an idea, a crazy, desperate idea that might actually work. All strike teams, new orders, he broadcast. Don't just try to destroy the hive, try to confuse it. Hit it with every chaotic, unpredictable attack pattern you can think of. Commander Jin-ho led the first penetration attempt, taking his remaining modified ships directly toward the hive's surface. The massive creature's defenses opened fire, sending streams of bioelectrical energy at the attacking vessels. But Jin-ho's ships didn't attack like normal military forces. They spiraled and weaved, fired randomly, and used completely unpredictable flight patterns. The hive's defenses, designed to counter logical military tactics, couldn't target them effectively. We're through the outer defenses, Jin-ho reported, beginning penetration of the creature's hull. The human ships burrowed into the Prime Hive like insects attacking a much larger animal. Inside the creature's body, they found a nightmare landscape of organic tunnels and chambers pulsing with alien life. This is insane, one of Jin-ho's pilots radioed. The walls are alive. They're trying to crush my ship. Keep moving, Jin-ho ordered. Don't let it figure out what you're doing next. Meanwhile, the battle outside the hive was reaching its climax. Dong-hyun's force had been reduced to only a dozen ships, but they were still fighting, still drawing enemy fire away from the strike teams. This is Captain Dong-hyun, came his final transmission. My ship is crippled, but we're making one last run at their command ship. Tell my family I died fighting monsters. The explosion when Dong-hyun's ship rammed the Vorthak command vessel was visible across the entire battle zone. It took out not just the enemy flagship, but dozens of surrounding ships. But his sacrifice had given Jin-ho's team the time they needed. Deep inside the Prime Hive, the human strike force had found something incredible. Admiral, Jin-ho's voice came through the communication system. You need to see this. The hive's central nervous system isn't just biological, it's quantum mechanical. The entire creature is a living quantum computer. Dr. So-young's excited voice joined the transmission. That's how it controls the hive mind across the entire galaxy. Quantum entanglement allows instantaneous communication with every Vorthak ship no matter how far away. Can we destroy it? Hyunwoo asked. Maybe, Jinho replied. But I have a better idea. What if instead of destroying it, we infected it with something it can't process? Something completely chaotic and human? Before anyone could ask what he meant, Jinho's ship accelerated toward the hive's quantum core. But instead of firing weapons, he opened his ship's communication systems and began broadcasting everything that made humans human: music, art, poetry, the voices of children, the laughter of lovers, the fury of warriors fighting impossible odds. The effect on the Prime Hive was immediate and devastating. The creature's surface began convulsing as its quantum brain tried to process the chaotic flood of human consciousness. Energy discharges sparked across its hull as the carefully ordered hive mind network began breaking down. "It's working," Dr. So-Young shouted. "The quantum entanglement is becoming unstable. The connection to the Vorthak fleets is fragmenting. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented began happening. Vorthak ships that had moved in perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly began acting independently. Some attacked their own allies, others fled in random directions. The unstoppable swarm was becoming a confused mob of individual creatures fighting over resources, but the victory came at a cost. As the Prime Hive died, its death throes threatened to destroy every human ship in the system. Massive energy discharges and gravitational anomalies tore through space around the collapsing creature. "All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace," Admiral Hyunwoo ordered. "Get clear of the blast zone." Most of the surviving human ships managed to escape before the Prime Hive's final explosion. But some didn't make it. Captain Jin Ho's ship, deep inside the creature's body, was consumed in the blast that finally killed the source of the Vorthak menace. The journey home took 3 weeks. Admiral Hyunwoo stood in the observation deck of his damaged flagship, watching the stars that no longer held the same terror they had months before. Behind his small fleet, the galaxy was changing in ways no one had expected. Dr. So-Young joined him at the viewing port, carrying a data pad full of reports from across known space. She looked exhausted but hopeful. "The latest intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations," she said, handing him the pad. "You're going to want to see this." Hyunwoo read the reports with growing amazement. Throughout the galaxy, Vorthak forces were in complete chaos. Ships that had moved in perfect formation for millions of years were now fighting each other. Some were fleeing toward the galactic rim. Others had simply stopped moving altogether, as if their crews had forgotten what they were supposed to be doing. "The hive mind collapse is more complete than we hoped," So-Young explained. When Commander Jinho infected their quantum network with human consciousness patterns, he didn't just disrupt their communication. He fundamentally changed how they think. Changed how they think? The Vorthak were a collective intelligence for so long that individual members of their species had forgotten how to be individuals. Now suddenly they're all thinking independently for the first time in millions of years. They don't know how to handle it. This was better news than Hyunwoo had dared hope for. The mission to destroy the Prime Hive had been about stopping the endless production of new enemy ships. No one had expected it to cripple the existing Vorthak forces as well. "Sir," called Lieutenant Yejin from the communication station, "we're receiving a message from Earth Command. They want to speak with you immediately." The communication screen activated to show General Mi-young in the war room on Mars. Behind her, Hyunwoo could see staff officers celebrating. The usually calm military professional was actually smiling. "Admiral, I have good news and better news," Mi-young said. "The good news is that Vorthak attacks across human space have completely stopped. The better news is that 3 alien species have asked for our help in retaking their homeworlds." "Help from us?" Hyunwoo was surprised. 6 months ago, they thought human tactics were barbaric. 6 months ago, they hadn't seen what barbaric tactics could accomplish against impossible odds, Mi-young replied. "The Alari, Kethvar, and Zephyrian governments have all formally requested military assistance. They want to learn how to fight like humans." This was an interesting development. The species that had once criticized humanity's chaotic warfare were now asking to be taught those same methods. "There's more," Mi-young continued. "The Galactic Council wants to hold a special session to honor the human fleet. They're calling your mission the greatest military achievement in galactic history." Hyunwoo felt uncomfortable with the praise. Yes, the mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. But the cost had been enormous. Thousands of brave people had died to make victory possible. "General, prepare a full casualty report," he said. "I want the families of everyone we lost to know exactly what their loved ones accomplished." "Already done, sir." "But Admiral, there's something else you should know. Captain Jinho is being recommended for the highest military honors from not just humanity, but from every species in the Council." The mention of Jinho made Hyunwoo's throat tight with emotion. The young commander had made the ultimate sacrifice, piloting his ship directly into the Prime Hive's quantum core. His final act had saved the galaxy, but he wouldn't be coming home to see the result. "He deserves every honor they can give him," Hyunwoo said quietly. "He and all the others who didn't make it back." When the surviving fleet finally reached human space, they found a celebration waiting for them. Ships from dozens of species had gathered to escort the heroes home. The communication channels were filled with messages of gratitude from across the galaxy. But the moment that meant the most to Hyunwoo came when they reached Earth orbit. Floating there, completely repaired and crewed by fresh volunteers, was a new ship bearing a familiar name, Jinho's Fury. It was humanity's way of ensuring that the hero's sacrifice would never be forgotten. The formal ceremonies could wait. Hyunwoo had something more important to do first. He took a shuttle down to the surface, to a small house in the countryside where Jinho's parents lived. They were waiting for him on their front porch. A quiet older couple who had raised one of the bravest people in human history. The woman's eyes were red from crying, but she stood straight and proud when she saw the Admiral approaching. "Mrs. Kim," Hyunwoo said, removing his hat, "I'm here to tell you about your son." "We already know he's dead," she replied simply. "The military notification came yesterday, but we want to know how he died." Hyunwoo spent the next hour telling them everything. How Jinho had volunteered for the most dangerous missions throughout the war. How he had led the final assault on the Prime Hive. How his last act had infected the Vorthak hive mind with pure human chaos, saving billions of lives across the galaxy. He died protecting people he had never met, on worlds he had never seen, Hyunwoo concluded. But because of what he did, children throughout the galaxy will grow up free from the nightmare that was consuming everything. Jinho's father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That sounds like our boy. He never could stand to see bullies hurting innocent people." The official celebration took place a week later in the capital. Representatives from every species in the galaxy attended the ceremony, honoring the human fleet. Alien leaders who had once criticized human tactics now spoke of humanity's courage and sacrifice. But the speech that everyone remembered came from an unexpected source. Captain Veltar of the Alari ship Starwind, one of the few alien vessels to survive the mission, stood before the assembled crowd and said something that no Alari had ever said before. "For 10,000 years, my people believed that wisdom meant avoiding unnecessary risks," he said. "We survived because we were careful. We endured because we were cautious. But humans have taught us something we had forgotten. Sometimes, the most necessary thing you can do is something that seems completely unnecessary to everyone else." He paused, looking directly at the human survivors in the audience. Attacking the Prime Hive was unnecessary from any logical standpoint. The smart thing would have been to retreat to the Outer Rim and hope the Vorthak eventually moved on. But because humans chose to do the unnecessary thing, the galaxy is free. Dr. So-Young used the ceremony to announce her latest research findings. "The Vorthak hive mind isn't completely destroyed," she revealed. "But it's been fundamentally changed. Where once there was one collective intelligence controlling billions of ships, now there are millions of individual minds learning to think for themselves." "What does that mean for the future?" asked a reporter. "It means the age of the swarm is over. Some former Vorthak groups are already trying to establish peaceful contact with other species. They want to learn how to exist as individuals instead of as parts of a collective." This was perhaps the most unexpected outcome of the war. The Vorthak, who had been the galaxy's greatest nightmare, might eventually become its newest citizens. But the real celebration happened in smaller, quieter places. In human colonies that had been evacuated and were now being rebuilt. On alien worlds where children could play outside without fear of the sky darkening with enemy ships. In the homes of families who had lost loved ones but could take comfort in knowing their sacrifice had meaning. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the observation deck of his new flagship, looking out at the stars that now held promise instead of terror. The galaxy was still healing from the wounds the Vorthak had inflicted. It would take years to rebuild everything that had been destroyed. But for the first time in months, the future looked bright. The massive numbers that had seemed so overwhelming were scattered and broken. The unstoppable swarm had learned what every bully eventually discovers. There's always someone willing to stand up and fight back. No matter how bad the odds, sir, Lieutenant Yejin said, approaching with a message pad. New orders from Earth Command. We're being assigned to help the Kethvar retake their home system. They specifically requested human tactical assistance. Hyunwoo smiled. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to ask humans for help, not because humans were smarter or stronger than other species, but because humans had a unique gift for refusing to accept that anything was truly impossible. Prepare the fleet for departure, he ordered. Let's go teach our friends how to be unreasonable. As his ships jumped to hyperspace, heading toward their next mission, Hyunwoo thought about Jinho and all the others who had died to make this moment possible. They had proven something important about humanity, something that would be remembered long after the last Vorthak ship had been converted to peaceful purposes. When massive numbers weren't enough to stop human fury, it turned out the numbers simply didn't matter. What mattered was the willingness to fight for what was right, regardless of the odds. And that was something no enemy force, no matter how large, could ever truly defeat. The war was over. The healing could begin, and throughout the galaxy a new lesson had been learned.